Episode number 13.
There's a very clear correlation now between those that are actively using these channels and those that are consistently exceeding quota and making more money.
Welcome to the Be Real Show with Travis Too Tall and Huff, where we talk about solutions, tips, and tricks for social marketers and businesses.
Well, hello and welcome to the Be Real Show with Travis Too Tall and Huff. I am jazzed up today to have my featured guest, Matt Heinz, on the line. Matt, are you ready to be real?
Let's do it.
Yes. Matt Heinz is the president of Heinz Marketing, a B2B revenue acceleration firm focused in sales acceleration, pipeline management, and a lot of other cool business-to-business consulting aspects. So after looking at your website, really impressed. Matt, we've talked a little bit about you, but please tell us more.
Sure. I've run a sales and marketing consulting firm where we're basically sales pipeline people. We help B2B companies build pipeline, generate new leads, basically find and close more business.
Absolutely, and now more than ever with social, it's amazing what can be done in the social space.
Yeah,
it's truly, social selling, I think, is just in the infancy.
Yeah, I would agree, and it's funny. We're seeing more and more data that doesn't just indicate that sales reps are picking up social channels as a means of sort of building and managing their pipeline, but we're now seeing a more direct correlation between social media usage and likelihood of exceeding quota. And obviously, there's a lot that goes into that to make sure you're following best practices and using social channels as a channel, not necessarily a means to an end, a means to a means, but using it as a component of your selling strategy. But there's a very clear correlation now between those that are actively using these channels and those that are consistently exceeding quota and making more money.
That's amazing. And it's true. It's something that I think is more and more going to be used by all levels of sales and marketing efforts. Because like you're saying, there is actually correlations now, I think, more and more to showing that this is actually returning revenue here for you.
Yeah. I mean, it's exciting, right? And I think that it doesn't preclude the use of other technology and other means. I mean, if you were to ask me what the most important channel and most important technology I use for selling today, it's still the telephone. The telephone is the most important tool I have, but our toolbox continues to increase, and I think our toolbox will change depending on who you're selling to, what channels they're comfortable with, where they prefer to communicate. And I think the headline here isn't, hey, go start using Twitter. The headline is, understand your customer well enough so that you understand where the different places are where you can interact with them, knowing that the more impressions you can create, the more positive value you can create across those channels, the more likely you are to create the relationship you want, build value, and ultimately find and close the deals you need.
It's so true. And I love what you say about the phone too. That is the closing mechanism of the year. I mean, at the end of the day,
Yeah.
I mean, let's be real. I mean, an in-face or an on-the-phone meeting, you just get to hear the person's personality. You get to hear their energy levels and their insights. And we just seem to talk more freely and from the heart when we're talking face-to-face or on the phone. And then on an email, we're kind of scripted in a way. We kind of are editing ourselves, and I find it just to be a really authentic way of obviously meeting people, and social is a great way to start that conversation, but then take it offline on the phone or take it, in a coffee if you have a chance, because that is the final closer. I mean, at the end of the day, people want to know that it's more than just a profile picture.
Well, you think about putting these things in context, right? Like if I don't know someone at all and I just cold call them, it might be an awkward conversation, right? They don't know who I am. They don't know if I'm going to provide any value. They don't know I may be a total waste of their time. If I talk to them after they've seen content on my website, after I've engaged with them on a social channel, after they've seen even a brief history of me building value, attempting to provide value with them, not only am I no longer an unknown entity, but there's some context to the relationship we've started. So as long as I don't get on the phone and immediately start trying to pitch and hard sell, if I continue that same stream of value, my same abilities, or attempt to make every interaction I have with someone valuable to them, the phone becomes another channel, but becomes, I think, an accelerator, right? I mean, your ability to sort of have a conversation, to accelerate what's happening in that conversation, and to sort of move things faster. It's faster than email, it's faster than social. It's a great replacement for face-to-face in many cases that is more efficient, more scalable. So I just, I'm hard pressed to today at least find a single tool that is more effective and more efficient than the telephone.
Yep. I think it will be in the future too. Like you said, it's because it's scalable and it's still personable, and you can't, realistically meet with everybody, but a quick 5 or 10 minute phone call, you can really kind of help them out, provide that value like you mentioned. And hey, we had a good podcast guest, Jack Kozakowski. Mm-hmm. He mentioned that he had 10 minutes for everybody. And it was like, yeah, that makes sense. You have 10 minutes to spend talking to someone, getting to know them. And if you're not going to cold call, if you want to call it hard sell right off the bat, providing value, you build a friendship from the first conversation, and then later on when you need something, you might be thinking about that person top of mind.
Well, there's a bias for action that you have on that. First of all, Jack's absolutely right. I think there's a bias for action that you have as part of your approach that says, if you say you have 10 minutes for everybody, what you're really saying is that I'm going to replace the time that I hem and haw and trying to figure out whether I'm actually going to make the call or should I really prioritize it or what channel should I use. By the time you do all that work in your head, you're already 2 or 3 minutes into your 10 minutes, right? And honestly, in many cases, a phone call with someone, 9 times out of 10, you're going to leave a voicemail anyway. You're not going to reach them. But the fact that you made an attempt, the fact that they heard from you, the fact that that attempt and the message you brought was a continuation of the value you're providing, that makes a huge impact. I mean, I see a lot of sales reps spend 45 minutes researching, a prospect before they call to make sure they know everything about them, only to leave a 45-second voicemail, right? So not an effective use of your time, but still, I think knowing that the majority of the time you're on the phone, it's going to take a lot less time than that. But when you do take more time than that, if both parties are taking more than 10 minutes, there's value on both sides, which by definition means there's a lot of value for you. So aren't you glad you took the 10 minutes on the phone to accelerate the velocity of that conversation or relationship versus, shooting off an email or sending a direct message and hoping they see it and respond to it.
Right. And I like what you said, make an attempt. It's so many people are afraid to make an attempt. And I think what you mentioned about the phone call, and we're going to finish off talking about this, but it's just so true. Just make the attempt. If you reach him on a voicemail, hey, you know what? You left a voicemail, and it's a great way of showing, hey, I care. I'm trying to start this relationship. So now we're going to take us to a Be Real story. Take us to a time, or tell me a story about where you feel like you failed. And we always look at failure as a life lesson and a learning lesson, but take us to a time where you maybe failed at social media.
Oh man. How much time do we have, right? So I think, I think if you're doing it right, and when I talk to marketers, I'd say if you're doing it right, you're failing all the time. If you're a marketer and you're doing A/B testing, by definition, B is always wrong, right? So you're wrong at least half the time. And the only way you're going to find new things, the only way you're going to innovate what you're doing to reach results that other people have not yet been able to reach is by failing. So, on social, I would say, it's a combination of, just the list is long. It's, okay, what are we doing to proactively grow the followers that we have on Twitter or on our LinkedIn page? We've experimented with a lot of things. Some of them have actually, in reality, come across less authentic than we want, and so we've stopped doing them. Right? We've continued to try to find the right balance between being intensely personal and manual in doing that on Twitter, for example, and automating certain steps. So, for instance, there'll be certain hashtags for conferences or hashtags for certain topics that we will use tools to go and sort of follow people en masse. We will unfollow people en masse if they haven't re-engaged with us. Gotcha. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. So we're constantly sort of adjusting what we consider our sort of best practice playbook. And I think if you're testing a lot, you'll have people that react negatively to that as well. We use a tool that for certain keywords referenced in certain contexts on social, we will favorite the tweet, we will follow the tweeter, and then if they follow back, we'll in some cases send an automated direct message with an offer related to the keyword that started the whole conversation.
Wow.
9 times out of 10, people say that's pretty cool. Every once in a while, someone says, I hate Twitter spam. What the hell are you doing? So is that a fail? Sure. With that individual, I didn't make a good impression. But if 95 times out of 100, I get a positive reaction and 5 times out of 10, I get a negative reaction, what should I do with that information? Should I stop doing it?
Right.
Should I keep doing it knowing that the majority of the time it's a positive benefit? Should I worry about that 5% where I'm having a negative value? Is that going to start to creep into and deteriorate my brand? I mean, they're good questions where there isn't necessarily a right or wrong answer, but I think, it speaks to the fact that success and failure usually isn't sort of 100% in either case, right? There's always gray area.
Always. And now that we're all content creators, it's more than ever, like you mentioned, if you're actively in social, you're failing quite often, by testing and seeing what works. And I think the biggest failure you can do in social is just not to learn, and if something strikes your audience the wrong way, hey, maybe take into account, if 95% of people are having a successful, happy experience, well, that's awesome. The 5% of people that are the haters out there in the world, there's always going to be a percentage of people on social that are hating on the music video and giving, Justin Bieber a negative thumbs down and we hate you. But do you think he cares? Because at the end of the day, he's moving a lot of things forward. And it's just a really cool example, what you said, though, about how you're actually intuitively tracking keywords and then favoriting them, favoriting the person's post, and then also send him a message that has to do about that keyword. I really like that strategy. That's really interesting.
Yeah, no, these also sort of evolved over time, right? As we've identified, look, for our audience, social media is an incredibly important channel. Is something that we, put a lot of time and effort into. I will say, though, that, behind all of that, what's most important is making sure that you have good content, you have a good story. The social media and the social channels is not the strategy. Content is the strategy. What do I have to say? What am I going to do to provide value in a particular context? What am I going to do to make sure that I'm providing value to the right people, but also providing value to as many people as possible within a certain context, knowing that most of them aren't going to have anything valuable for me, in terms of, my pipeline, doing business, driving revenue for our business. You still play the numbers game, right? The way that we think about sales pipeline management doesn't change just because we have social media. It scales a lot better. But, you got to know that the majority of people you engage with aren't going to do anything. But you also have to know that the majority of people that don't do anything, you are still investing in future relationships. You're investing in future referrals. And our investment there is far more scalable now that we have content and social tools that allow for that.
Yep. Each piece of content you're creating, planting a seed, and it turns into a tree, but it turns into a tree over time. And it never is immediate. People always are looking for the viral piece of content. It's like, I don't think of it that way. I think of it just telling your story like you're talking about, and really pushing forward, going back to our first thing, just being active every day and being a part of it. A lot of content creators kind of struggle with not having success on a piece of content. So now take us to a moment, take us to a point where you feel like social media marketing completely changed your mindset. Take us to your most epic social moment.
It's interesting. I don't know that there's an epic social moment, but I think there's a reminder on a regular basis when I get out to events and when I speak and when I'm at a conference of the power of social to drive value, to drive awareness, to drive brand. I've been doing this for long enough now that between our content and speaking and our social presence, it's developed an awareness for us. It's developed a brand for me, and it's developed hopefully a reputation for value that I can't always measure and don't always see. And so it's completely surreal when I'm at an event and someone that, quite frankly, is a great prospect of mine that I've never talked to and I don't know at all will come up and say, "You're Matt, right?" I'm like, "Yeah." I said, "I'm so and so. I read your content. I love following your stuff. It's super valuable. We share it inside our team." For that to happen without me knowing it, for that to happen without me having done anything explicit with that person or that company, it blows my mind. And it is a surreal experience. It is a humbling experience. And what's exciting is that it's I don't know how to describe this. It happens more and more often now,
right?
And it's if you can do that in a focused way, by saying here's the, the target audience you care about, the content they care about. So you're not being so narrow that you're addressing the same topic over and over and over and over and over again, but you're addressing a broader set of topics that are relevant to an audience that you feel like today, tomorrow, future could do business with. there's an impact there. And the impact goes well beyond what you can sit at your desk and measure. And so getting out in the field and meeting new people that already know who you are, where you've already developed a relationship. I mean, the only thing I can sort of think of it as the analogy I keep thinking about when it happens is the local news anchors you see on TV. I mean, I remember growing up, we go to the county fair. I grew up in San Francisco Bay Area, so we go to like Alameda County Fair, and you'd have like news anchors, and the weatherman would be like sitting at a table signing autographs. And I somewhere as a kid, like I have autographed pictures from the friggin' weatherman, right? Yep. But the weatherman was a celebrity because you saw them on TV all the time. And when people come up and say, it's a pleasure to meet you, I love your content, just want to quickly say hi, like it's not like it'd be easy to sort of like, let that stuff pump your ego up. Like for me, what it does actually is it makes me hungry to provide more value. It makes me realize the power that we now have in this social and content world. And more than anything, it drives me to want to just go do more of that. What else can I do to earn that? What can I do to earn that tomorrow? I think the people that do this the best, they don't have big heads. They go to work every morning and they put their hard hat on and they say, what do I have to do today to rebuild, to reinforce, to re-earn the reputation and relationships that I have? And I think that applies whether you're a keynote speaker, it applies whether you are a presidential candidate, it applies if you are a sales professional trying to build reputation among a network of people that may or may not be ready to buy, but still hold you in the highest regard because of the value you've been providing.
Yeah, and we'll go back to that surreal experience like you're talking about. These people know who you are, and the most interesting thing I think about social specifically is people will view your content, share it with their team, but they may never favorite, they may never retweet, they may never comment, they may never, you physically may never even see their action. And this happens once in a while with the podcast as of lately, and people are like, oh, I heard your podcast with Kim Garst, or oh, I heard, and I'm like, well, you didn't like her favorite or comment, or you know what I mean? It's just like you first think of that first reaction of we want engagement, we want you to comment and share right away. But it's really impactful for like you and your business, like you're saying. It just makes you excited to do more because you know that it's not about getting a bunch of favorites, likes, comments, reshares, retweets, et cetera, which is very important. But it's more about the content providing value that people are actually willing to share it with their internal teams, read it themselves. And they know who you are as a thought leader in your industry, bottom line.
And on one hand, it seems completely ridiculous, but I think also it is so powerful. It is so incredibly powerful, the impact that has. And I think what's also exciting to me is a lot of the people you look at that have developed that power, that have developed that reputation, they're not special. Travis, I don't know you super well, but I'm not special. I'm just a guy that started writing a blog and stumbled into figuring out how to share it through other channels. Right. Yes, you have to I think you have to have something interesting to say. I think being a good communicator, being someone that is good with words and that can write is a helpful piece of that. I think the other helpful piece is just making this a regular discipline. Like you write a blog post and you think it's going to go do everything, then you're wrong. I've been writing for 10 years in a blog. Every day I do things that are trying to sort of build value into the network. And so this behind the scenes, this takes an incredible amount of focus and it takes an incredible amount of discipline. It's a lot of hard work. There's no shortcuts to this. And so if you're in sales, the same thing applies. You have to do this on a daily basis. You have to be listening for buying signals and trigger points on a daily basis. You need to be interacting and engaging on a daily basis. Now, if you miss something, that's okay. Everyone's going to miss stuff. But you still have to have that regular discipline of engaging because those activities will build up into the momentum and reputation you want that will help you hit the number.
And it's all about doing, right? You've been doing it for 10 years. Most people on their blogs give up after 7 blogs. 10 years, my man. You've been hustling. You've been going at it, and I'm sure the next blog you write is even going to be better than any of your other blogs.
Well, I don't know.
Just because
there's certainly stinkers in there, right? There's times when you write something and you think it's going to go crazy and nothing happens. There's been times when I've sort of kind of gone on a little verbal bender and you're you throw something out there sort of in the heat of the moment and it's a 5-minute blog post and it goes nuts. But I will tell you, and for for people that may be listening, they're like, I've been writing a blog, no one listens, no one reads it, no one whatever. Like that was me for years. Like I was putting stuff on the blog and occasionally putting it into a newsletter. And you look at your traffic and you're like, when are people going to show up? How do I get people to read this stuff? Right. And there's no overnight success in this. Like this, I think this is why you look at people like the Jay Bears and the Seth Godins and the Jill Rowleys and the people that have reached a point of awareness and popularity and expertise. You're like, wow, that's amazing. They got there. It seems like they got there quickly. No, they didn't. Mm-hmm. They've been doing this forever. Like they've been like one of my favorite examples of this is I remember kind of back when social selling started to really sort of come into its own, and Chris Brogan has for years been sort of a social media guru. He's been doing this, and so he started to get the reputation. People said, oh well, he's an overnight success. He was just right place, right time, and he finally posted a video on his blog. I'll never forget this. It was a video he filmed of himself leaving his house at 3:15 in the morning. And he says, you know what, guys? This is what it takes. I am leaving my family, leaving my house without enough sleep to probably go, wait on a tarmac for a delayed flight to get to an engagement that is the next building block in me helping build my business and my brand and helping me get the success I want. This is not easy. There are no shortcuts. It's 3:10. I'm going to work, And so I think that was a great example, and I'll never forget that just in terms of the hard work it takes to see the success you want, not just in social media, but just in really anything.
Oh yeah, and it's all about what we've kind of have a reoccurring theme here. It's just all about showing up and doing and making it part of your discipline, like you mentioned. And if you want to do something in life, you can do it. We are an empowered world where we can just go on Google, go on YouTube. You can learn about it. There's influencers that are there teaching you about it through awesome content and blogs. Yep. But it's just about your actions at the end of the day, which makes like you said, for yourself, 10 years of action. Now you're a thought leader in your industry, and I think it's just still the beginning because of how important social sales and how important, like you're doing pipeline management and really keeping track of your customers and relationships, it is to businesses. Yeah. It's vital. It's everything versus thinking about you need to advertise. You need to think about who's in your pipeline and how can I be better for them and give them better content like you're talking about. So now we're going to enter the mindset of Matt Hines with some B-realisms. In the perfect world, where would you love to live?
Oh, I live in Seattle and I love it here. I think
nice.
I like it here a lot. We just last fall, we bought, we're still basically, we moved 2 blocks from our house in Kirkland, which is suburban Seattle. And we are now in a 105-year-old farmhouse on a half an acre that butts up against this, as far as the eye can see, green bank. So got super lucky to find the house and the land we wanted that's still 20-minute drive outside of Seattle. So,
that's awesome.
So I'm super blessed. And, my wife and I are doing some remodeling and some renovations on the house and have a bunch of plans for the yard, building a chicken coop for the new chickens. I mean, it's awesome. I think we disagree beyond that in terms of she would like to have a beach house. I would like to have a mountain house, but neither of those are anywhere near. We've got 3 young kids. I mean, those aren't anywhere near sort of near-term plans, but I could obviously talk about lots of other places I like, but I think to a certain extent, the mentality has to be I love where I am. This is where I am.
Oh yeah. I like to ask that question just for people's passions to come out, to be honest with you. And I aspire to be a lot of places. I've never been to Seattle, so maybe one day we'll have to have a coffee at the Starbucks. Or what is your favorite coffee place?
There's just like any city, there's a lot of great small independent coffee shops.
Yes.
And for those listening in Seattle, especially those on the east side, there's a small family owned, I wouldn't even call it a chain because it's 2 places. I think at this point it's called Urban Coffee Lounge, and
nice.
They make great coffee. They're super passionate about what they do. They're really friendly. One of them's 3 blocks from my house. The other one is, literally halfway between the house and the office. So, I call me crazy. I actually like a good Starbucks latte as well, but I like supporting the family businesses.
Absolutely. There's nothing like supporting the family business. You just get a different feel. Yep. They're not so corporate. Yeah. And they make, your latte a little slower, and they might, use a little extra milk on that one, and then they use on the other one. So how do you typically like to start your day?
I like to get up early. My alarm goes off at 5, and some days I'm better at avoiding the snooze button than others. But I like getting up. I like being able to kind of start a little slow. I like peruse the paper, get a cup of coffee. Oftentimes, I'll have a kid that'll get up early as well, and we can just get a little alone time before the day gets going. But I find if I sleep in too late, or if I'm just too harried, like the whole day I feel behind. And if I'm able to get up a little earlier, get a cup of coffee, take a moment just to sort of mentally prepare for the day, everything goes better.
Yeah, I totally agree, especially with just like, getting your day started, waking up, even if it's just, making breakfast and things like that, just it feels like it's a little bit less rushed.
Yep.
When you wake up a little late, you're like rushed, you're rushed here, appointment here. You never really get a chance to just see what's going on in the news, enjoy your morning. It's a part for entrepreneurs, especially if you're working every day or just passionate about your business, that, it's nice to have that little point in the morning where you're not firing all sorts of stuff for your clients. It's just me time. So what would you say is some of the best advice you've ever received?
Oh boy. I think from a sales standpoint and for our business, and even like this entire conversation about content and social media, it's, you got to sell the whole, not the drill. And I think it's an important reminder for anyone in business. We all have drills. We're all trying to sell drills. If you really want to give me money, I have a drill. But you don't want a drill. You want what the drill enables, right? And so there's an outcome that everyone cares about that is related to but separate from whatever you're selling, right? If we need to, we too oftentimes are selling the means to an ends. The more we can sort of speak to the ends, the more we can speak to the outcomes people care about, I think the better all of our conversations are going to go. So I think it was the CEO of Black & Decker, the maker of tools, is the first person I heard say that. He's like, listen, I know people come to the store to buy a drill. We are not selling drills. And it's just, it's so applicable in so many different contexts, sales, marketing, and beyond. I love it.
Yeah, I love that. That's a nuts and bolts, simple for everyone to understand, no matter what level you are in the social world. Sell the hole and not the drill.
That's right.
So, can you share a personal habit that you feel leads to some of your success in business?
Yeah, I think it's every morning at 7:30, I have a meeting on my calendar for 30 minutes. I call it my daily do list, and it's a ever-changing checklist of things that I want to just do on a daily basis. It's everything from thank you notes to people I met yesterday, double checking calendar for today, certain social selling activities, certain content development activities. It's an ever evolving set of topics that often I will print that out and use it as a checklist for the day. But that checklist, as we've talked about all along, it increases the consistency and reliability with which I'm executing on the things that I care the most about.
Yep. And so do you put it like in a Word document or something like that, and then you print it up?
No, it's actually literally like on my calendar, right? So every day at 7:30, it's in my calendar. I used to just treat it as a meeting, but then if you get past 8 or if you don't get going early enough, then it's gone. So now I'm in the habit of every day just printing that out and just having it with me until I finish it, or until I realize, I'm not going to finish it, but I'll try it again tomorrow. The trick isn't to always get through the checklist every day. The trick is to get through as much of it as you can every day, which in and of itself massively changes, how likely you are to be more consistent and more productive on all of those things.
Absolutely. I'm the hugest believer in a checklist. I love visually. I believe in the power of, conceptually writing things down and visualizing it. And then that kind of gravitates towards you, like in your dreams and the goals and things like that. Yep. But also for just the things you got to get done for the day, or things you want to get done. Yep. I think, that's one of the most wise things that you can do as an entrepreneur, is just a simple little checklist. So now we're going to enter the hot seat where you can share some phenomenal resources and some final real talk answers with us. Be real, Matt. If you could sit down and have lunch with anyone in the world today, who would it be?
Do they have to be alive?
No, they don't.
All right. Not just because I'm a believer, but it's Jesus Christ, and I think oftentimes I'll put, I think about the people in the world, in the history of the world, that have not only had a massive impact on the people around them, but have had a lasting impact. We're 2,000 years later, and the work Jesus did, whether you're a believer or not, whether, whatever you believe, like the impact he's had is still with us. That is incredible. So I'd like to pick his brain on a lot of different things, but I think just to be able to sort of hear him and then being able to parse directly what that means in terms of influence, what that means in terms of leadership, just tons to learn there.
Absolutely. Jesus Christ is a hero. And no matter, like you said, no matter where you are, religion, belief, things like that, the fact that his story is, and the story has lasted for thousands of years and is so passionate to the believers, and even non-believers, it's still a passionate story of humbleness. And I'm a huge believer of giving without expectations. And I think that's what really Jesus did. He gave without the expectation of receiving. And with good content and with things like we were talking about today, I think a lot of the actions you have to take are with his same kind of example.
Well, and there's a level of, I mean, I'm sure you're familiar with the topic, the kind of the idea of servant leadership as well, right? And you see this, in the secular world, you see in this business world of people that just bring a level of humility and service orientation to their work, no matter what their role. And I think that's one of many lessons that I think you can take from, and not just Jesus, but from a lot of religious leaders, from a lot of sort of cultural and sort of social leaders in terms of how they have earned the trust, earned the following of people, not necessarily by being leaders, but by counterintuitively by being one of the people, by seeing them with someone that you can relate to and that you believe in.
Yeah, the Dalai Lama is another one that some of our guests have been really interested in meeting too, because the same thing I think you mentioned. It's amazing to see the power that these people have created, and they've done it out of a humble place.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So now, do you have a favorite internet tool or app that you like to use on a daily basis?
Oh, there's a bunch of them. I mean, I think about the things. I mean, I'm in LinkedIn every day. I'm in Salesforce.com all the time. I'm just managing our pipeline as well as working with our clients. Hootsuite, I'm using to sort of keep a pulse on what's going on. I've got a bunch of different columns set up that are filters for different people and groups that I care about. So I would say it's, if I think about the browser tabs that are open all the time, it's Salesforce, it's Hootsuite, it's Feedly, just to keep track of all the content that I want to read, and LinkedIn.
Nice. And LinkedIn has just evolved more and more with how functional the web and the mobile experience is. I really am excited about their social network platform for businesses. I think it's still infancy as far as people using it, unfortunately, but that's amazing for all the people that already have, and the early adopters are going to benefit tremendously in the next 10 years, I believe.
Yep.
So tell us, do you have a favorite book or a book suggestion, or do you like an audio book that you would like to suggest to our listeners?
I'll give one sales and one marketing book. I mean, the sales book, for those that are not hardcore salespeople, I definitely recommend To Sell is Human by Daniel Pink. It outlines an approach to selling that has been around for a very long time, but I think he takes the old sort of Dale Carnegie How to Win Friends and Influence of People approach to selling and puts a fresh coat of paint on it and provides some very real sort of recent relevant stories around it. So no matter what business you're in, whether you're actively selling or not, I like that book a lot. For those that are listening that may be more in a marketing role, I would highly recommend a book called Scientific Advertising. It's one of the best direct marketing books I've ever read. It was written in 1923 by a guy by the name of Claude Hopkins. And
Wow.
Even back in the day, man, I mean, the way he talks about direct response, the way he talks about copywriting, the way he talks about taking the customer's perspective, it's just super, super impressive. And so, I'd say those two books I'd highly recommend.
I love reading. I'm gonna have to check that one out. Scientific Advertising, and you said it was written in the 1920s.
Yes, yeah, early 1920s.
Wow.
And I mean, so Claude Hopkins was one of the founders, sort of the fathers, or godfathers of direct marketing. I mean, he was doing A/B testing back before Google Analytics, back before tracking. I mean, he literally is testing different headlines in coupons that people would clip out and take to the store, and the store would mail them to an office in Chicago, and some poor intern is hand counting all of these, and that's what he would use to sort of test messages and decide what to move forward with. It was amazing.
Wow, that's amazing. I'm gonna have to check that book out. What skill do you wish you could master in the future?
Oh man, I think I think the thing that comes to mind right now is just home construction. Just because with this farmhouse, I think there's this constant list of things we're doing in and around the house, and it's actually a lot of fun to learn how to do a lot of them myself. I think we can, as much as I've been writing for a long time, I think just communication skills. I think especially sort of verbal and in-person communication skills, how to be more present. I think I tend to sort of I tend to look around the room even though I'm talking to someone, and it's not because I'm not paying attention to them, but it's like it's a habit I have a trouble sometimes sort of getting around. So being intentional, being focused in the moment, I would really, really like to be better at that.
Nice. I think that's a skill that all entrepreneurs tend to have, where we're kind of just have our mind running all the time, and I found myself meditation is a little helpful for me to just have that piece of presence and gratitude for the moment. Like, I'm very grateful for this interview and getting to know you, to be honest with you, Matt, just because you're teaching me some things here too along the way. And that's honestly one of my intentions of why I even started this podcast, is to learn.
That's great.
So if you could develop any new business in the world, what would it be?
Oh man, I think that's a great question. I would try to find a way to empower more people with business opportunities that allow themselves to be accountable for their results and the impact it has. I've worked with a couple organizations that aren't just providing funds to developing countries and third world nations to help individuals and entrepreneurs grow businesses, but are putting contingencies on those dollars that require those organizations to be responsible, to give back to others, to sort of pay it forward. And so I think that there's a multiplier effect that can have among people that have just as good, if not better, skills and instincts than people do in the first world country. They just happen to have better opportunity around them. So I think, enabling more of the people that just don't have the inherent opportunities and environments and circumstances that we do to contribute to society, but then be accountable for that, both with themselves as well as the next generation or next group. That's pretty exciting. And I know there's some companies and some firms that are already working on that. And it's also a lot harder to do than you can make it sound. But the impact can be, sort of revolutionary.
Global, yeah. You're talking a whole new global force of workers. And I think there has been some development with just Elance and some of these tools to help people use freelance. But I like what you're talking about, just to really empowering others that have those skills in different areas and being able to connect them. I think there's a huge business there. And it probably is very hard to do, but you never know. Yep. So can you give us one last real talk thought, and then how can our listeners get a hold of you?
You can definitely get a hold of me, a number of ways. My Twitter account is just at Heinz Marketing, HEINZ Marketing. Just my email address is Matt, M-A-T-T, at HeinzMarketing.com. The thing, we talked a lot about just sort of putting your hard hat on a daily basis and sort of doing the hard work, doing the daily work, doing the consistent work to sort of build value. I guess the last point I would give is just just be hungry, continue to learn, to read as much as possible, ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask what you think might be a dumb question, because 99 times out of 100, it's not a dumb question. Other people have been afraid to ask it, and it's going to make you smarter as well as make you look good to the person you're asking the question of. So be hungry, be curious, sort of be the person that is constantly learning and constantly making yourself better. And by doing that, making the people around you better as well.
Well, you've been hanging out with my man, Matt Hines and Travis Too Tall and Huff. I want to thank you so much for your time today, and keep being real. This podcast is proudly sponsored by realtimeoutsource.com, your social media management service for success.